Alright. Kamusta
Hello.
po kayo dyan? As usual, ito po, part of our election series. Meron na naman tayong very special guest.
Very special,
Another
oo.
senatorial candidate, but from a different side of the political spectrum. Kasi yung mga previously, of course, we had J.V. Ejercito, no? Former Senator J.V. Ejercito. Of course, before that, we had Shell Docno. So tayo naman, we're very diverse. So we get candidates from across the political, ideological spectrum. And today we have, of course, the man of the moment, of the month, no? Or actually March, April na. So hopefully we'll have another moment. Si Atty. Luke Espiritu. Maraming salamat, sir, for joining us.
Yes, good afternoon, Richard, at saka si Mark. I will have to ask for yung apologies kay Mark dahil nakalaban ko yung kanyang tatay. Pasensya na talaga, Mark.
Kailangan natin
naunahan na yung script
kailangan
natin.
natin sort out po yan mamaya.
Mamaya, Mark,
nadadama yung pamilya ko eh. Kay Atty. Luke.
Ayan tayo eh.
Huwag mo naman ako pahirapan, Mark, ha? Huwag mo ako pahirapan. Alam ko na medyo napuruhan ng konti tatay mo doon.
Sige.
Kamusta daw kay
I-sort out
Harry?
natin later yan. Atty. Luke. Kung ano
Kaya
bang
ayaw
nagawa sa inyo ng
magpa-interview
tatay
natin
ko.
si Harry kasi alam niya anak niya, hindi. Okay, alright. Okay. Sorry, Lord. Okay, bye-bye tayo. Alright, sige po. So unang-una, I mean, of course, Attorney, you had your moment, kaluk na lang. You had your moment last month during the debates, etc. So some people are quite familiar with you. Some of us, of course, have known you for a while. So I'll just be disclosure kagad. You know, we have met in the past. We have had very engaging discussions, I would say, and I look forward to our discussion today. But I'm sure there's still people who want to know more about you, Attorney. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? Paano po kayo nagsimula sa movement? What are the achievements you have had there, or things, the main struggles and advocacy you have had there, so that we can understand how later on paano kayo nag-decide, no? Para pumasok, no? Talagang get into the ring, no? Which is the Philippine politics. I'm sure this is quite an experience, no? But before that, can we get to know a little bit about you, Attorney?
Richard, medyo late vocation ako. Kumbaga sa mga pare, tawag siya late vocation. Late ako sumama sa mass movement dahil hindi naman ako nagsimulang student activist ako eh. At that time, nung college ako sa Ateneo, on the decline ng activism sa school na yun. Particular lang sa school na yun. Kasi 1990s yun. Yun yung time na bumagsak ang Soviet Union. So suddenly, socialism was not sexy for a lot of people. Bumagsak ang Eastern Europe. So ang aktivismo was on the decline sa Ateneo. So nung lawyer na ako, nung time ng anti-Gloria struggle, meron naman ako noon even before, nung bata ako, may pusong siguro aktivista, militante na rin naman. Pero nagkaroon talaga ng occasion yan nung anti-Gloria struggle when I used to join itong mga groups na to against Gloria, and then I got to meet I don't know if you know Richard, si Rusty Diliso of San Lakas. So I got to meet him, and then we had some discussions for 3 years. Nakikipagdebate lang ako sa kanya, and until I joined the mass movement after that. So lawyer na ako when I joined that, and naging labor leader ako, at involved ako sa struggle against contractualization. Organize namin ng mga contractual workers. At nung time ko as president of Dibukluran ng Manggagawang Pilipino, yan yung time na lumaban na talaga yung mga contractual workers, nagkaroon ng series of strikes. Natutulog tayo sa picket line. Kaya medyo frontline na type of labor leader tayo.
Attorney, can I rewind a little bit? Can you explain to us how did you transition from pare in the making into kind of a labor lawyer, labor activist? I mean, I'm sure it was a psychological, emotional journey, no? And how did you reconcile, these two different worlds, some would say. But some would say, of course, the two actually can go together, liberation theology and all of that. But can you explain that a little bit to us? Because I'm sure walang masyadong katulad nyo sa Pilipinas. Perhaps marami sa Latin America, other places. But I think you're quite unique, no? Can you tell us what was the journey?
Tama ka dyan, Richard. I started na religyoso ang aking background at nag-seminaryo ako for 1 year. And I also wanted to join the Jesuits. Nag-seminaryo ako sa Salesians. Tapos I tried to enter the Jesuit order. Pero sabi nila, in-advise nila ako, 2 years ka muna sa labas para experience mo, yung ordinary experience ng teenager. Pero alam nyo, Richard, that even at that time, attracted na ako sa liberation theology. I was born in Negros. Ang mga pare doon, mga kwan naman mga radical na mga pare na very much into social justice at anti-Marcos struggle nung panahon na yon ay malakas sa Negros. So matindi na yung mga sermon ng mga pare doon about human rights. Tapos nakita mo pa yung nangyayari doon sa very stratified na society sa Negros at that time. So yung religious na background natin into the liberation theology, very much it's just a natural transition from that towards yung pro masses na politics that I have right now. At sinasabi ko nga, pati mismo sa Ateneo, liberation theology is being taught. Part yan ng subject from high school to college. So you get to learn things, concepts about social justice, social sin, hindi lang personal sin, social sin, about unjust social structures that we have. You get to learn that. Kaya nga, you have to blame the Jesuits for what they became. Mga Jesuita ng turo sa akin yan Di ba? So,
si Pope Francis, di ba? Medyo may background din siyang gano'n or exposure a little bit. I understand. Kasi Argentina, right? Latin America went also through its own liberation theology struggle against military juntas, etc. So ako, I'm very familiar doon. But honestly, you're quite a unique, person to me in the Philippines because I haven't seen as many people like you. Latin America, marami. Even the Pope, I would say. So thank you for clarifying that. Kasi marami tayong mga atheist na kaibigan natin dyan. Ay, pag sinabing Jesuit and Christian, meron na silang idea na conservative yan automatically. When I think they don't understand, there are many very progressive, social justice-oriented people within the religious hierarchies.
No, I don't consider the Jesuit order as conservative. Far from it. Progressive ang mga Hisbita. Although siguro may pagkakaiba lang sa mass movement itself na ang pinanggagalingan kasi ng Jesuit siyempre yung talaga yan yung teachings ng simbahan. Pero to arrive at the same conclusion na unjust ang social structures natin, it's the same conclusion, iba lang yung pinanggagalingan at may pagkakaiba rin sa approach. But I don't consider the Jesuits at all as a conservative. Tama ka dyan. Pope Francis himself is the most radical pope that
I don't, right? I'm just saying
right?
about the misconception, unfortunately.
Yes. It is really a misconception.
Yes. Right.
It is a misconception because I owe a lot to the Jesuits.
Right.
Alam mo, gino-glorify doon sa nung high school ako, yung mga example halimbawa ni Evelio Javier na isang governor sa Antique and namatay siya during the last days na lang ng Marcos regime. Yun ang mga narrative na yon na pinopromote sa Ateneo. And there is even an Evelio Javier Award in the Ateneo ng high school. So medyo matindi.
Alam mo dapat yan, Mark, Ateneo ka rin paras kang Atenista, di ba?
Atenista ba si Mark? Anong year mo, Mark?
Atenista yan si Mark, yes. Mark, naka-silent ka. Ayan yung host po natin. Medyo nakalimutan na mag-zoom.
In fact, meron akong barkada. I think, na siya, relative or kamag-anak nila Evelio Javier. Kaya medyo familiar din ako doon sa story.
Right.
Taga-Antique. So,
at syempre, may pambayad talagang tatay mo sa Ateneo. Diba?
Ayan na naman tayo sorry, sinasabi ko kasi UP ako. Alam mo naman, UP, dahil mga atheist na dyan, nakakairita yung iba sa kanila Parang fundamentalist atheist ang tawag ko ngayon Pag sinabi mo lang religion, grabe na sila, di ba? Kaya ako gusto ko pag nagbibigay ng tao ng mga more nuanced analysis dito sa mga. Kasi may Christian socialist din tayo, especially in Europe, di ba? Sa Germany, etc. So I'm quite familiar with that. Pero sa Pilipinas, unfortunately, hindi pa ganun ka-clear. So thank you very much, Attorney, for giving us that kind of background. Now, before the radicalization that you went through during the Arroyo era, and I wanted to a little bit talk about that kasi parang nakalimutan ng tao yung si Arroyo Like everyone talks about Duterte or Dilawan, etc. As if Arroyo didn't happen. She was like 10 years, no? And disclosure, tita ko siya.
Tita mo ba?
We are related, yes. So I know what was going on during that time because some of my family members were always in Malacanang and all of that. So I know. Again, I'm not going to say anything, but please go ahead, be honest. But before that, of course, there was the EDSA II, which allowed for Arroyo to come to power to begin with, and etc. Saan po kayo nung EDSA dos? The reason I'm also asking is because previous interview natin was with JV Ejercito. And of course, him being an Estrada gave the Estrada version of reality, right? Which is talagang this was a conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. Now, to balance that out, I want to get your stance from the other side of the political spectrum. Ano naman po yung, what was your experience and what is your reading of EDSA dos and its broader implications? I believe we're still dealing with the implication of EDSA dos, including maraming middle class na nag-give up sa democracy because they were frustrated with what happened after EDSA dos. I think that's a very important juncture in our history, hindi lang EDSA 1. Can I get your take on that, Attorney?
Yes, it was a very important juncture for me personally then. At that time, I was unaffiliated, but I was there. So natulog ako sa kalye doon until the time na umalis si Era. And I remember at the time kung ano yung nararamdaman ko when Gloria was being uploaded on stage. There were a lot of people na nagbubu kay Gloria. Remember, yung Sanlakas at that time na nag-mobilize dyan, I was not part of any political group at that time. At that time, naalala ko, nagpunta ako sa law school para pumasok. And then we gathered doon sa auditorium, and then Father Joaquin Bernas suspended all the classes sa law school at pumunta kami lahat sa EDSA dos. And at that aware, na-hijack na naman ng mga elite natin at mga trapo natin ang movement para alisin si Erap at itatalaga na naman nila ang another type of elite rule. It's one type of elite rule being replaced by another elite rule, and I was very, very conscious of that. And I was also very conscious of the fact that what we needed was really revolution, yung magbabago talaga sa ating lipunan. And kapag pinalitan mo lang yung elite rule with another elite rule, hindi yan revolution, change of regime lang yan. Na parehas lang din naman of the same social class. So, ganun na ako mag-isip at that time, though unaffiliated. And I was impressed with the line of Sanlakas, yung sila ni Popoy Lagman at that time, BMP. I was not part of them. Part lang ako ng student body na pumunta doon. Sa kanila, resign all. Hindi Gloria Arroyo. Anti-Estrada sila, tapos hindi rin sila for Gloria Arroyo. And I kind of related to that. And I remember very well, ang daming nagbubu when your tita, sorry Richard, your tita mo was being uploaded on stage by the other elites, mga business club, Makati Business Club, at siya ang tinalaga na presidente. So
you see it as a hijack. You see that as a hijack.
Yeah, hijack.
What about EDSA 1? Do you see the same thing in EDSA 1? Like there's a popular revolt and then hijack ng mga oligarchs and elites? Is that also how you see it?
Kind of, but then it's also a different matter altogether. Kasi si Cory Aquino really was really able to mobilize yung
right.
Not as artificial as EDSA dos na type.
Right. It was more genuine, organic.
Yeah, it really came from a long anti-Marcos struggle.
Right.
Hijack in a way kasi ang nagsimula naman hindi naman ilang araw lang yung revolution sa EDSA. You know, niluto yan ng isang dekadang struggle of which involved ang manggagawa, ang mga magsasaka, ang entire yung masang Pilipino. Involved sila doon sa pag-create ng situation para magkaroon ng EDSA People Power Revolution. But then again, after the EDSA People Power Revolution, we had the same liberal democracy that was installed. And you know what will happen kapag in-install mo liberal democracy, they would like to put a brakes to further revolutionary process so that there will be normalcy in their rule. And when you establish normalcy, at least, di ba? So hindi magkakaroon ng further convulsions. That's why I always say that kind of a condition allowed the restoration of Marcos. Because if you put a brakes to revolutionary convulsions, to the revolutionary process and establish normalcy right away, then it will save the Marcos family from getting punished, for example, sa mga revolutionary tribunals, sa revolutionary courts na nangyayari kapag nagpatalsik ka ng diktador mo. They were allowed to go into exile, and then 5 years after EDSA, allowed back into the Philippines. 6 years after EDSA, si Imelda Marcos was able to run for president against another crony, that Bingkwangko. And then after 6 years after EDSA...
Actually, pag sinama, sorry to cut you. Actually,
sorry,
sinama mo yung Vogue vote ni Imelda at si Danding, sila yung mananalo eh. I mean, this is the crazy thing. If only they were united, which is what they accomplished this time, right? They could have come back to power as early as 1991.
Yes, that's true.
This is
That's
ridiculous.
true.
I mean, this is how fragile the post-Marcos the Marcoses really never left. They're just always knocking on the door, and one day they're gonna get the opening of the door,
yes,
right?
and then gradually and slowly they were able to claw their way back into power. They became congressmen, governors, senators, and Bongbong Marcos ran for vice president in 2016, and now he's running for president. And then we are on the verge of a Marcos restoration, and it did not happen overnight. The foundations of that were laid a few days after the EDSA People Power Revolution. So that's what happened.
So attorney, ang basa ni dito, I'm sure Mark, by the way, nakatatlo ba kahit naka-group ano ba tayo dito? Kasi ako minsan nagkakamali ako. Dun sa going back to this. So essentially, attorney, what you're saying is hindi nagkaroon ng clean break. And when you don't have a clean break or proper justice, right, after regime change, it's going to come back to haunt you. And in many ways, we're paying the price for not doing what was supposed to be done decades ago. But I mean, my understanding is that's what you're saying, which I think a lot of social scientists will completely agree with you, right?
Yes, we're paying the price of yung pag-restore ng liberal bourgeois rule. And that's the price we have to pay right now. Na ang history natin ay hindi nagkaroon ng closure. Kung Ninoy Aquino was very much alarmed of the prospect na later on, pag nagka-revolusyon, talagang yan sila Marcos, yung Marcos family, bibitayin yan. In fact, he said in his speech sa LA, and I think in many speeches in the United States, he was writing letters to Ferdinand Marcos telling him to negotiate now while he was still in power, because later on it would be too late because people will be asking for your blood. And that was very true. The mob was already at the gates of Malacanang. And kung talagang nagtuloy-tuloy ang revolutionary process, dapat yan hinuli at dinala sa revolutionary tribunals.
And the Americans did not intervene. I mean, Americans saved them.
Yes, the Americans intervened.
They took them to Hawaii.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, mangyayari niyan, pagka binita yan, wala tayong Marcos Restoration ngayon. Kasi masusulat sa history books natin yan at matuturo sa mga kabataan na ang lesson ng EDSA People Power ay kapag diktador ka, bibitayin ka, you would have stamped out the memory of Marcos and he would have been just a chapter in our history, the darkest chapter, at maituturo sa mga kabataan yun. Pero dahil hindi, symbols of the Marcos regime existed side by side with symbols of the EDSA People Power, side by side. May Marcos Highway tayo, at the same time na may Ninoy Aquino International Airport tayo.
Pinanak ako doon sa Marcos Highway. I was
doon ka pinanak.
I was sa Baguio. Yeah. So,
yes.
Just to give context here, wag niyong ganunin si ano.
So parang naging masyadong maluwag. Ganun ba yung pinaka-point mo, Atty. Luke?
Walang system na pagbabago ng sistema, because if you have the same elite rule to replace another elite rule, no far-reaching changes will really happen. So that type of a situation will create the conditions for the rise of the former ruling family, because elite din sila, parehas lang ng social class ang naghahari. So as a rival to the other faction of the ruling class, it's the same elite class na nandyan. Pero pag nagkaroon ng yung pagbabago, yung may class-based talagang pagbabago, hindi mangyayari yun.
But look, I mean, okay, let me patulang kita dyan for a while. So we have the French Revolution model, which is what it seems some are saying perhaps that should have been done, right? Kasi may pagka Marie Antoinette pa yung isang ano natin dyan, di ba? Yung first lady dyan, di ba? Na out of this world, na sobrang decadent. But we also have the example of Russia, right? We had the kind of a popular Soviet revolution, but some would say Russia didn't necessarily become a more democratic country once the Tsarism. I mean, Tsarism was horrible, but I mean, but let's not idealize Stalinism that came not long after. What about that?
That was a dictatorship na create under the name of proletarian dictatorship, but it became a dictatorship of a group of bureaucrats, yung mga apparatchiks ng Soviet Russia, and that's a lesson that has to be learned by the socialist movement.
You also reject that. You also reject that.
I do.
I want to be clear because Mark was trying to clarify. Parang pag sinasabi sa Pilipinas progressive, automatically Stalinist, Maoist iniisip, diba? Well, in fact, that's not the case, right? So I think I want to also understand your position, your ideological position. How do you understand a good revolution. So if it's not the Russian Revolution, and if it's not our American style revolution, then what are we looking at here in terms of bringing about genuine
definitely
change?
we don't want any yung dictatorship of a bureaucratic group, yung mga apparatchiks na yan. We really need empowerment of those that are in the bottom, yung mga manggagawa, at syempre in alliance with the farmers, in order to move our society towards a wider range of democracy. Kasi yan naman dapat yan eh. When you talk about proletarian democracy, it should be far-reaching than elite type of democracy because it is the democracy of the majority. Definitely, it should reject bureaucratic dictatorship.
So is it parang sa States kasi narinig ko yung term na parang democratic socialism? Is it something similar to that? Gaano ka pareho doon sa nakikita ko like sa States kala Bernie Sanders, kila AOC, itong pinaglalaban ninyo ngayon, Attorney Lou?
Democratic socialism.
And if there's
yes.
if there's also kind of models we can talk about, are there like models in, let's say, in Brazil, Chile, I don't know, in Europe, Scandinavia, like are there precedents, historical precedents that can give us an idea? I mean, we can talk about utopias or what you want, but what is the closest actual system na medyo sa inyo yun ang nakaka-inspire sa inyo? Again, nothing is perfect. Of course, ideals are one thing, reality is another. But just for us to have an idea, because we know some of the other quote-unquote progressive, I think they have more China in mind, right? Today's China. And I'm not sure that's really a progressive system.
You know, the socialist movement is still on its journey doon sa pag-create ng tamang sistema. To answer Mark first, yung term na democratic socialism is actually a reaction to that, yung Stalinist type ng socialism. And yung kapag dating sa models, merong mga iba't ibang mga lumalabas. I'm not in a position to say na yan ang perfect because in itself, ang socialist movement ay nag-i-struggle pa. Continuously na nag-i-evolve through actual struggles. And then theoretically, nagka-catch up doon sa mga new developments. Now, I could only say that, you know, it also points the way towards yung pagkakaroon ng far-ranging democracy, yung mga nangyayari sa Latin America. But I cannot say if it is perfect kasi sa ngayon, nandyan pa rin yung mga reactionary forces na in order to upset kung ano yung ginagawa ng mga socialist governments na nandyan. Pero it is an attempt to make democracy real. Merong kailangan kang pagbayaran in terms of how fast your revolutionary process should be. And one of that is, do you capture the state power, the entire state machinery, or you just capture a certain section of that state, which is the executive government. Na meron ding limitations yun. If you just capture the presidency, all the rest, hawak ng elite, your Congress, hawak ng elite, your state force, security forces, hawak ng elite, pwede. Yung counter-revolution nandyan. Always, yung mga gobyerno sa Latin America, kahit yan ay inelect na nila yung mga socialistang presidente, andyan pa rin ang danger ng counter-revolution. And that was demonstrated by the regime of Salvador Allende. He captured the presidency, yes. He used that in order to empower the workers and empower the farmers and the poor citizens of Chile. But then may pushback kasi hindi naman state power ang kinapture nila, kundi isang parte lang ng gobyerno. Ang armed forces mo ay hawak pa rin ng elite.
And then US, CIA, mga yan.
Yes, nakapasok ang US kasi may base pa rin ng US influence doon sa mga oligarchy na nakasuksok sa legislature nila at saka sa armed forces nila. So anong nangyari? Namatay si Allende. And there was a reversal na nangyari na si Pinochet na yung naging presidente, pinagpapapatay yung mga nag-struggle for a better and more humane society. So hindi mo siya masasabing perfect kasi wala tayo sa posisyon na masasabing perfect yan. I could just say na it points to a direction na nag-i-evolve, and it is the struggle that will actually shape kung ano yung mangyayari sa socialist movement worldwide. Now sa Philippines, we have to learn those lessons sa ibang bansa. We have to learn from the experience of Stalin. We have to learn from the experience ng kay Mao. even Pol Pot o kaya yung sila Kim Il-sung sa Korea, and then also learn from the experiences of Latin America, from Cuba, from Venezuela. So, and
The
we have
ones
to
that
work it
went
out.
wrong, right? I mean, learn from the mistakes of the past, right? I mean, that's what I appreciate, because I think ang problema ng ibang tao is that they think when you say left or progressive, may fix ng idea of what social justice, and then pipilitin nila even if na-fail yung ibang iterations. So what you're saying is it's a constant work in progress. It's a constant struggle for a better world. At the end of the day, justice will never perfectly achieve, but we have to continuously go for that. I mean, there's something almost Christian about it, right? This constant struggle for self-cleansing and being closer to God, etc. I mean, I can see the parallels also there. Let me ask you one more thing. In our previous episodes, diba, Mark, kasama natin si Dr. Lero, no, Cecilia from Brazil, no. So we talk about the experience of Brazil. Very tragic situation, but I think there's a good chance that Lula and the Party Trabajador can come back to power. I think later this year, I think they have a very good chance of coming back. And I'm sure they're also thinking about what went right and what went wrong in the past. But at least they captured the presidency and power to a certain degree, and they might come back again even stronger and better. Are there things we can learn probably from Brazil? And the reason I'm saying Brazil is because katulad natin ng Brazil, very socially unequal, ang daming trapo, meron lack of accountability by the junta regime, so many parallels, so much inequality, so much racism, cultural differences, feudalism. So are there things maybe Brazil that can teach us that we can understand?
Yeah, it is. I think the Philippines should learn from the fact na real change comes from class struggle. It is important for our Filipino masses to attain that level, at least the minimum level of class consciousness. Kasi if we do not attain class consciousness, talagang madaling maloko ng mga elite ang ating masa. Na imagine mo, sino-sino ba yan sila na nagiging presidente, nagiging senador, na ini-elect. Mga kwan din yan business owner, mga kapitalista, mga landowner, may mga land grabber pa nga. Pero sinong bumoboto sa kanila? Namamayagpag sila sa survey, sino yung mga botante? Manggagawa. Yung mga biktima ng evictions sa lupa, yung mga biktima ng high prices na ina-adapt ng mga elite na ito, yun mismo bumoboto sa kanila. And the reason is medyo mababa pa yung level ng class consciousness dito. Pero na-achieve natin yung class consciousness na alam na manggagawa ako, iba ang interest ko sa mga kapitalista, at malaman ng ating mga magsasaka, ang masang Pilipino, ang mga maralita natin na kakaiba interest ko dito sa mga tumatakbong ito, sa mga trapong ito. Therefore, ang aking poproteksyonan ay ang class interest namin dito sa baba ng ating social hierarchy, at hindi yung class interest netong mga tumatakbo na to. Then that would create the conditions for us na kahit paano mababago natin ang politika. And that's the lesson we have to learn, not only from Brazil, but from other countries in Latin America going through the same process. Naabot nila yon kasi yung masa nila ay at least nagkaroon ng consciousness ng uri. Ibang uri ko dito sa mga to.
Richard, tanong ko na din
Mark, may
sana.
tanong ka dito kasi yung clarification mo very good. Go please, Mark.
Medyo nalilito yung mga tao, attorney, nalilito pa din. Of course kasi meron yung makabayan, tapos akbayan, tapos pero iba yung sa inyo, 'di ba? Yung sa grupo niyo na PLM, that is a separate group. Ano ba yung pinagkaiba-iba ng mga grupo na yon, attorney?
Well,
concrete terms.
Kumbaga we have different shades of socialism.
Okay.
Yun yung pagkakaiba doon, ideological that means. But then we are one when relative to the ruling class, relative to the trapos. We are one. We are all progressives, and we do. Hindi naman pwede nating i-highlight ang differences, pero what gain do we have if we highlight the differences rather than the similarity? And we are very similar in the struggle against elite rule, and we are very very similar in the issues na pinupush natin para dun sa mga nasa baba ng ating social order, yung masang Pilipino. And in fact, we do support unconditionally yung mga candidates na galing sa iba't ibang mga political groupings na yan na progressive din. We support, for example, Risa Ontiveros. We support Nery Colmenares. We support Bong Labo. We support Sani Matula. Together with politicians na alam naman natin hindi naman trapo. Like Chel Jokno, Laila Dilima, Teddy Bagilat. So there is more similarity right now relative to those that we oppose than the differences. The differences will not be played out until after yung pinaka-abante na pag-usad ng ating politika. Ngayon nasa pinaka-basic tayo Nalalabanan natin itong mga trapo na to. At more basic than that, hindi lang basta trapo at hindi lang basta elite rule ating problema. Yung pinaka-worst types pa ng elite rule represented by Duterte and Marcos. Yung elite rule na pumapatay, yung elite rule na nagbabiolate ng human rights, yung elite rule na mandarambong at yung elite rule na may tendency towards authoritarian rule. So mas marami dapat tayong napag-uusapang similarity. Kasi yan ang kalaban natin Wala pa tayo doon sa level ng pampulitikang struggle natin na yung differences natin in terms of ano ba ang sosyalismo, paano ba ma-arrive at ang sosyalismo, mataas pa yon. Ilang climb pa up the ladder yon, ilang level pa yon para ang differences natin ay should come into place sa ngayon. Sa ngayon, we have to unite.
You do have differences in terms of presidential candidates to support, right? So we have I think Neri and Riza on the Lenny kind of slate, and then we have some of the more progressive groups also going with Isko Moreno, for instance. Of course, you are with Cagliodi. What about that? So you may be, siblings, ideological siblings, but in terms of political alignments, you're pushing for different presidential candidates.
But no one will support Marcos. We agree on the fact that the most pressing danger right now is for these criminals, these elite criminals. They are elite, but the form of elite rule that they represent is the criminal type of elite rule, patently criminal, and we have to oppose that. So kahit mag-iba-iba man kami ng presidential candidates, we are one in that. Now, let our experiences dictate, our actual struggles dictate. I think there is a basis for unity. I think yung pagkakandidato lamang namin ni Cagliodi and ni Walden points to the fact na hindi natin kailangan na kumabit sa iba't ibang mga politiko. May possibility. It is a very real na tayo mismo na nasa mass movement, tayo na lang ang magsama-sama kontra dito sa mga to. Kung hindi man mangyari ngayong eleksyon yan, we have pointed to that direction. And I think it's a positive contribution doon sa
progressive movement. You have to plant the seeds.
Yeah.
You have to plant the seeds.
Ako nga, si Attorney Luke, yung nagawa yung awareness from Cagliodi to Prof. Walden, and ngayon ikaw with your SMNI debate, talagang it has done a lot to create awareness dun sa mga pinaglalaban nyo. And idagdag ko lang, Attorney, kasi merong mga tao na hindi alam, you have a party list also, di ba?
Yes, oo.
Yung Richard, hindi masyadong na-highlight, Richard Merong party list din yung PLM na tumatakbo ngayon sa elections.
Sorry, I'm just getting my battery. Medyo yung dalal natin para more than I thought. We'll try to stick to the time, but sorry. And there's so much good stuff being said here. I'm getting my battery just in case. You're right. Yes, paki-clarify din dun sa party list part.
Okay, kasi ang aming political party, Mark, is the Partido Lakas ng Masa. That's a political party that can field candidates for both local up to the national positions. Okay. Now, that political party may also register as a party list. And we did register our party list. And we called it PLM party list. PLM is short for Partido Lakas ng Masa. That's 1, 2, 3 sa balota. So aside from the fact that we fielded candidates from president to vice president and senators and down to councilors and even mayors, we also fielded our party list as a party list candidate this coming May 2022 elections. So number 1, 2, 3 sa balota, very, very easy to remember, PLM party list.
Maraming salamat for that. Mark, do you have something to add? Because I wanted to also ask, Attorney, how did you decide to join, as in sumabak sa politika ng derecho? I mean, can you tell us a little bit about your struggles as a labor leader? Because natanong na namin sila Calyodi, but in your case, we want to also know about that. And then what happened to make you decide to run for the Senate? Is it the Duterte thing really pushed you to make the leap of faith? Is that what's happening here?
Okay, Richard, yung kung matatandaan natin sa mga ibang bansa, ang labor talaga ay at least na political force sa bansa nila. At least yung politika may class character ang bakbakan no. Even when you go to England, merong Labour Party, against yung sa mga party naman ng mga elite na mga business owner, nagbabakbakan sila. So, sa ibang bansa, ang labor talaga ay malakas and politically ay meron silang party at they get themselves involved sa political process sa elections. Sa bansa natin, yan ang kailangan i-create. And meron namang development sa area na yon. Kasi noong 2019, kung maalala ninyo, Richard and Mark, nagkaroon kami ng labor win coalition. Yung iba't ibang labor groups from KMU to FFW to Buklura ng Manggagawang Pilipino ay nagsama-sama yan para mag-field ng labor candidates. So sa BMP, sa Buklura ng Manggagawang Pilipino, si Calyodi ang pinatakbo namin na senator, kasama niya si Nery Colmenares sa Makabayan Block naman, at si Sunny Matula pagdating naman sa FFW, at sila lahat ngayon ay tumakbo ulit, di ba? So may inabot na siya na development towards creating that labor vote. I-consolidate ang mga manggagawa. 40 million yan, Mark at saka Richard, na mga manggagawa. Significant na number yan, pero hindi bumoboto based on their class. So we have to create that. So may inabot yan noong 2019, and it's just a natural development for us in the labor movement na magpatakbo rin sa 2022. And si Calyodi, dahil siya ay tumakbo bilang president, and we wanted to create that labor win again sa senatorial. So ako ay nag-decide na tumakbo. Ang intent sana namin ay magkaroon pa rin ng labor win. Pero things did not pan out that way. But still we are, we support each other. I still do want the labor leaders who run for senators like Elmer Labog and Sunny Matula to get elected. Para may labor leaders tayo sa Senado. So yun yung mga reasons kung bakit ako tumakbo. Parang in pursuit of the same development na sinimula na namin na 2019. And to answer that first question, ano ba ang aking experience as a labor leader? Ako ay frontline talaga na nag-lead. As the president of the Buklura ng Manggagawang Pilipino, I really go into organizing myself ng mga, lalong-lalo na sa laban sa kontraktualisasyon. Nag-organize tayo ng kontraktual na manggagawa. At sa mga welga ay andun din tayo sa frontline, natutulog mismo sa picket line. Yun yung ginagawa ko as a labor leader. And of course, knowing that yung aming mga struggles ay establishment level, alam naman natin yung contractualization, hindi mo naman masosolve yan kung per establishment ka lang. Ang daming pabrika niyan na wasakin mo yung mga manpower agencies na yan. At the end of the day, it's really the government through its policies na root cause ng mga problema na manggagawa. So therefore, natural din na dapat pinapasok na rin yan na area ng struggle ang electoral politics. So yun yung experience ko as a
So you don't think na Liberal Party or the whole thing that Lenny Robredo etc. represent, don't you think that was enough to push for the rights of the labor groups at sorry, I'm adding this because parating narinig dun sa mga ibang tao, yung mga welga niyan, ano lang yan, noise lang yan, traffic lang yan. It seems a lot of our countrymen hindi nila naintindihan bakit kailangan ng labor struggle. Parang accept na nila na ganyan talaga. The system, the capitalists will dictate the terms. Why is it important for labor unions to continue and why is it important for them to have a political voice? At bakit kulang siguro yung mga existing supposedly liberal democratic parties or political figures to ensure na protektado yung interest ng mga manggagawa?
That attempt that was started in 2019, it highlights the fact that there is really a need in our society to consolidate labor as a political force, an independent political force. If we have a strong political force ng labor, independent from the ruling classes, for one, it will raise the discourse sa mas mga importanteng mga issues. And we have proven that sa pagtakbo ni Calyodi, ni Walden, ako. Let's not also forget because ayokong hindi ma-mention na sa Partido Lakas ng Masa, meron tayong dalawang environmentalist na si Roy Cabonegro and David D'Angelo. So we are merging labor and the fight for environment. So kung wala yan, and we have proven na kung hindi tumakbo si Calyodi, hindi nare-raise yan sa pampulitikang diskurso. Ang problema sa kontraktualisasyon, ang problema sa sahod. At hindi lang yan. We don't raise issues only confined to labor as a sector. We are raising issues on a whole range of other matters, especially the economy. We have articulated what is it that we want as economic model, to abandon the neoliberal type in favor of government really intervening in economic affairs in order to protect the public interest. We are also talking about democratic rights, about, for example, the repeal of the anti-terror law, also democratic rights for women and the LGBTQIA. So kung wala kami, di ba, hindi natin nare-raise ang diskurso sa mga level na yan. I was talking about divorce, I was talking about decriminalization of abortion, then suddenly it becomes talked about right now. And when I went out and drew flack from several conservative elements regarding my stand on decriminalization of abortion, then suddenly there are other candidates now who openly talk about it. I remember even the daughters of Lenny Robredo talked about that issue. Teddy Bagilat, I was surprised, was for decriminalization of abortion. So kahit pa paano, di ba, natataas natin ang diskurso. Imagine mo ang mundo na wala kami. Di puro trapo lang yan. It will be confined to yung mababa na talaga gutter type ng diskurso na umaabot na sa sayaw na lang ang ipipresenta ng mga trapo natin. Kasi wala naman sila ipipresenta eh. So, sorry talaga, Mark. Pinakamagaling na sumayaw talaga. Bilib na bilib ako, tatay mo. So, umabot na sa ganun. Sinasayawan na lang ng tatay mo ang mga putante. And it is an insult. Sorry, Mark. Sorry. Huwag mo ako pahirapan ngayon. Pero it really is an insult to the intelligence of the Filipino masses. Because what are you saying pag sumayaw ka? Wala. Hindi sila nag-iisip. Porket sumayaw ka, ikaw ay bubotohin na nila. So, ang baba-baba ng diskurso. So, importante ang independent political force ng manggagawa.
Papag-usapan natin, Richard, yung sa SMNI. Of course, yun ang talagang
Go!
So, ano yung nangyari doon sa SMNI debate? Ba't umantong sa ganung nung pagpasok ba niyon, iniisip niyo na ba na kung sakali magka-chance, I will confront ito dahil to ni Marcos, I will confront. So, paano ba yung nangyari nung gabing yun, attorney?
Nung debate ni Calyodi, nandun ako. So, I was already familiar with yung setting na andun ang MPFL-CAC, andun sila Badoy. Marami sila doon. Sila talaga yung crowd doon. So, kasi nung time na yon, binubu nila si Calyodi. Tapos nagkaroon pa ng confrontation between Kawalden and doon sa isang table kung saan binubu si Calyodi, tapos ginawa ni Kawalden ay binubu niya na rin si Marcos. Ang binubu siya ni Marcos, nagkaroon ng confrontation doon sa. So I knew very partisan. So at yung naging mainit na diskusyon doon is about rent tagging. It's about yung armed struggle na nangyayari ngayon. So I was expecting yun ang magiging mainit na issue. I never expected na hahantong sa Marcos at all. Kasi hindi naman hindi naman yun ang pinaglabanan ng debate ni Calyodi. So wala akong expectation na nangyari. Kaya nagsumasagot lang ako doon sa mga tanong. Kung mapapansin nyo, isang oras nang lumipas, kung ano lang yung tanong, yun lang din sinasagot ko. Wala akong predetermined na effort to provoke anyone on anything. So kung naging ganun lang yon, di matatapos ang debate na walang action. At ganun talaga mangyayari. So more than 1 hour. But then, yung tinanong yung mga kandidato, kung ano bang tingin nila sa issue ng children in conflict with the law, yung mga bata na nai-involve sa criminality, and it involves the question of whether to raise the age of criminal liability, raise it or ipabababain para maging liable yung mga kabataang yon. Ang ginawa ni Gadon, siya ang unang sumagot, siya ang nag-raise. Sabi niya, dapat may character development at inatake niya yung mga pare na ang tinuturo daw sa mga kabataan ay masama si Marcos at nagtuturo daw ng komunismo. So, baliktad yung kanyang tingin sa character development. Ang character development para sa kanya ay mabuti si Marcos. So, I had to counter it. Sabi ko, ang character development dapat ituro na si Marcos ay hindi mabuti. Siya ay nagko-commit ng human rights violations at hindi rin mabuti ang pag-glorify ng patayan ng EJK, ng mga tukhang na yan. What I mean to say by that is, nagtuturo ng masamang example yan sa ating mga kabataan. Can you imagine dun sa usapan na yon, ang sinasabi pa nila, umaabot pa yung usapan na dapat daw gawing liable ang mga magulang. Yung mga magulang daw ang gagawing liable. Pero sila, na nasa gobyerno, na nag-glorify ng patayan, ng EJK, silang mga kriminal, sila yung kriminal eh. Criminal mind. Anong example ang pinuprovide nila sa kabataan? Na okay pumatay? Na okay ang maging diktador? Okay na may human rights violations? So I have to raise that. So doon na nagsimula yung...
Gadon is talking about character?
No, Gadon defended
I'm being sarcastic. I mean, siguro dapat yung GMR ni Lacson medyo coordinate sila ni Lacson.
Character development.
Mark, meron ka bang dyan? Meron ka bang
yung sa kay Harry Roque naman, ano naman po ang yung kay biological dad. Ano
kasi human rights lawyer, ex-human rights lawyer, 'di ba? Ang kanyang tagline.
So si Gadon, siyempre di nagsagutan kami ni Gadon, and I think your father, Mark, wanted to go to the rescue of Gadon. At talagang hindi naman mapahiya si Gadon. So he said that wala daw record si Bongbong Marcos na anything. He combed through the records sa Amerika, sa Pilipinas, wala daw paso pagdating sa human rights at wala daw, hindi daw involved sa corruption. So I had to remind him na teka muna, di ba, bro? Ikaw nga ay nagkaroon ng you made your mark as a human rights lawyer. Di ba? Naging lawyer siya ni Jennifer Laude. Naging lawyer siya nung victims ng Maguindanao Massacre. Naging high profile siya because of that. And because of human rights...
Do you think nakikisakay lang siya? Because that's one thing I hear from some of, I won't name names, but people who know him very well, na this guy was just clout chasing all the time. That I mean, if he were really genuine, he wouldn't have turned the way he has turned now. Or
that's even worse. That's even worse because kung sumasakay ka lang, meaning to say, opportunista ka. Ginagamit mo lang ang human rights para magkaroon ka ng public profile, sumikat ka. At nung sumikat ka, hindi ka naman papansinin ni Duterte kung hindi ka kilala na magaling. And to be fair to your father, Mark, he's a good lawyer. And I would even say he's brilliant. But he made a mark as a human rights lawyer na na-notice siya ng publiko. And that's the reason why nakilala siya at naging viable appointee siya ni Duterte. And then he took that na nung inoferan siya, naging spokesperson siya ni Duterte. Naging apologist siya ng EJKs. Naging apologist siya ng the most bloody president that we ever had. Then after that, dahil he made a name for himself naman as spokesperson, walang gusto daw umadapt sa kanya. In fact, diba sabi niya yan, walang nag-a-adapt sa kanya. Suddenly, here comes Marcos, opened the doors for him. Then okay na siya kay Marcos when in fact he was anti-Marcos. So it's really even worse, Richard, because that means opportunistic yung galawan yon, opportunistic na galawan. At hindi totoo pala yung mga pinagsasabihin mo na for human rights ka.
So, tanong ko lang, attorney, after nung event na yon sa SMNI, gaano nagbago? Ano yung mga changes? Of course, lahat ng attention and how's it changed your campaign and yung mga nakakilala sa'yo? Mas dumami yung nagpapapicture? Paano bang nangyari, attorney?
I was at the very bottom going into the debate. Yung Pulse Asia surveys na yan, awareness-wise, mababa. Although tumas naman ng konti, pero hindi pa talaga ako kilala. So after that, awareness yata na, I think, nag-increase. Wala pang bagong Pulse Asia survey. na kinundak after the debate. And it's a welcome development because it will also draw or add another voice doon sa platforms namin ni Calyodi and ni Kawal then. And I think yung spotlight na nakuha natin ay can be put to good use by not drawing attention to myself but hindi naman tayo nagka-cloud chasing dito. Ang cloud chasing ay yung sasayaw ka, kakanta ka at magpa-cute ka. When I get those interviews, ginagamit naman natin yan in order to draw spotlight to our struggles doon sa ating mga platforms and to explain things. I never get tired of explaining things. Kaya nga mahaba ang aking sagot. Sorry talaga Mark at saka Richard. Mahaba because I really take this opportunity na mapapaliwanagan natin ang mga botante, hindi lang
No, we
botante.
need this. Thank you. Please.
Yes, oo. So yun, doon natin ginagamit yon. Kaysa naman walang nakakilala sa iyo o di maliit lang ang espasyo kung saan ka makakapag-enlighten. So pasalamat na rin tayo doon. At pasalamat ako kay Larry Gadon for that. Kasi he was bastos for one thing. In order to appear on that fateful night and for me to call him bastos. So,
pero Richard, di ba?
Si
Attorney Luke is parang ngayon a darling ng mga opposition supporters, di ba? Talagang he's becoming one of the faces na ng
but not the quote unquote pink people, right? Because I think Attorney, you said you're not going to support Lenny, right? Almost is that the categorical thing?
The question kasi was simplistic. Yung question sa akin ni Karen Davila without any context at all.
Yes, please, can you clarify? Yeah,
and I do have a ton. I think he wanted to really draw that out from me. And if Calyodi did not run, who's your second choice? And of course, I tried to provide a context, but this sa media gusto nila talaga yung medyo sensational. So ang sabi ko, kung wala talagang konteksto, then I will not say that. I will not say that I will support Leni Robredo. I would rather have yung presidential candidate, give it blank if there's no context. But actually, if I had been given
yes, please clarify.
A chance to explain, I do not look at anyone as persons. Ang problema sa atin dito, fans club ang nangyayari sa atin. Personality politics all around pa rin. At definitely, hindi pwedeng sa vacuum ka pumipili na, alam mo, hindi naman to parang pumunta ako sa restaurant na nagtanong ako kung ito ba available tong ulam na to. Kapag hindi available, meron akong second choice. It's not about like that. It's not about Lenny as a person. I look at Lenny as a person na merong ang kanyang grupo, ang Lenny camp ay merong right wing at merong left wing. At yung right wing na yan yung mga elites, yan yung mga, andyan din yung mga tinatawag na yellows, andyan din yung mga business owner, andyan yung mga conservative elements. And even within that camp, they are at war with the left wing. Who are the left wing? Those who support Lenny na nasa mass movement, na subok rin naman pagdating sa laban ng mga manggagawa, sa laban ng mga magsasaka, sa laban ng mga maralita, and may mga progresibong agenda. Now, if I look at Lenny, I support, I always say that, unconditionally and categorically the left wing of the Lenny camp. And I oppose the right wing of the Lenny camp. And in fact, the left wing has the duty to draw Leni Robredo to their camp. I do not support personalities. Because at the end of the day, I support the workers. I support the Filipino masses, not anyone as candidates. I choose my side based on principles. And if indeed the left wing is able to draw Lenny to the side of the workers and of the masses, then I will support Lenny as a person. Because na-draw siya sa pagsusuporta sa laban ng mga manggagawa. Pero as of now, that's why when I was asked, would you consider a Lenny presidency elitist? I still don't know, I said. Whom she listens to. Because I know there's a left wing and a right wing. Di ba? So I could not say whether elitist ang kanyang magiging regime. Possibly,
So,
yes. Di ba?
So, Attorney, you believe Lenny has an emancipatory potential, right, as a political figure now, because she doesn't come from the social class of the cacique and dynasties and all, right? At the end of the day, Robredo is a different thing. And that's what I always say. Let's keep on emphasizing the Robredo, the Naga model, which is much closer to a more progressive, people-oriented style of governance than the Liberal Party and some of the people running her campaign who clearly belong to a system that doesn't just resonate with people anymore. And I think Lenny should distance herself more from that. But clearly, as you say, there's still some people, the conservative elements, who are holding there. And these are people who don't like advice from people like us from the outside, right? We're giving constructive criticisms and they take it against us. But that's a problem. But thank you very much for clarifying that, and perhaps also reifying some of the ambivalences that some of us have, who are not against Lenny, but at the same time who have some reservations about the campaign and all of that. So what do you think of Lenny as a person, as a political figure? Do you think she can still be molded in a much more progressive direction? How do you see it?
She is the parang center point right now of the attempt to thwart Marcos and Duterte. And she is in a very, very lucky position to be in that place. And she should realize yung lugar na binigay sa kanya ng kasaysayan. And she should play it well and not disappoint those who put their trust in her. Alam mo, napakaswerte ng mga taong ganon. And I always see people na nilagyan ng ganong posisyon squander that. There's a lot who squander that opportunity. Na sila ang ginagawang simbolo. You know, ang ating political behavior sa Pilipinas, mahilig tayo mag-create ng simbolo ng bagay-bagay na
icons and methodologies.
Yes, oo. And sometimes, yung mga simbolo na nilalagay natin dyan, and most of the time, I would say, most of the time, ay hindi naman talaga sumaswak doon sa ating adhikain. And then later on, mag-disappoint tayo at mag-frustrate tayo. Pero sana sumwak. Kasi kapag sumwak ang simbolo, magandang bagay yon. Because it will give a push doon sa laban. Eh sana malaman ni Lenny yun, na sana sumwak naman ang simbolo na siya ang ginagawang simbolo ng mga gusto ng pagbabago sa ground. That's why yung mga kakampik sa ground, iniiba ko yan sa mga right wing. Iba yung karakter ng kakampik on the ground, yung sumusuporta kay Lenny. Ayaw na, sukang-suka na sa trapo. Sukang-suka na sa trapo ang mga kakampik on the ground. Gusto ng tunay na pagbabago. Yung mga kakampik on the ground. Hindi man nila suportahan si Calyodi o si Kawalden. Pero sinusuportahan nila ang pinaglalaban ni Calyodi at saka ni Kawalden. And in fact, many of them do sympathize with Calyodi and Kawalden. They do sympathize, but then sa isip nila, di ba, kailangan ng tinatawag nilang winnability. Yun yung problem eh. Kasi trap yung winnability. But then, sige, let's not go into that winnability thing. Pero they do sympathize with Calyodi and Kawalden. Look at what happened in Iloilo. The kakampings on the ground, when they saw Calyodi and Kawalden, they, welcome them na parang fraternal warmth. Binigay nila doon. They do sympathize. Pero dahil isa lang ang presidente, isa lang vice president, so ganito tayo ngayon. Iba ang kakampings on the ground because they want change, genuine change. They are not for elite rule. They are not for the trapos. And in fact, kahit may official slate, si Lenny Robredo, composed of many of them from political clans, many of them traditional politicians.
May Zubiri dyan, di ba?
Hindi na lang ako magsasalita. Hindi na lang ako magsasalita.
Hinay pa nga eh. May Jejo mo.
O sige na nga, magsalita na nga ako. Sinimulan mo na eh. Pero, we have the Subiris. We have the Subiris, we have the Binays, we have the Gordons. So, nare-reject ng kakampings on the ground. Mind you, they reject them. The kakampings on the ground create their own senatorial slates. And they fill this slate with progressive candidates na hindi part ng official slate. They get from the Sambayan slate and at the same time add on to that slate. And kahit pa paano, nakakapasok tayo doon sa kinikreate nilang slate na hindi ako Sambayan at hindi rin naman ako sa Lenny Camp, na kay Calyodi ako. So how do you explain that? Iba ang kakampings on the ground. They really want change. So, alam mo, wala na talaga yung mga trapo na yan. And Lenny should realize, napakalaki ng kanyang posisyon. It is imbued with huge responsibility. Do not squander that opportunity, Lenny, to be the symbol for genuine change in our country.
Right. Salamat for that. Mark, you wanna say something?
Yeah,
yes?
idadagdag ko lang din, sinabi ko na sa previous videos ko na si Lenny, sila yung opposition na binabansagan, yung buong senatorial lineup niya, pero wala ni sa kanila ang kasing hard humirit laban dito kay Marcos, dito kay Atty. Luke. Parang si Lenny meron siyang sariling senador, pero parang ang soft pagdating sa pag-atake or pagtira doon sa Marcos take.
I would say Riza Ontiveros, in fairness, is doing that. I would say, yeah. I mean, there are a couple of them, but you're right. There are many there who are parang masyadong pase.
Not hindi masyadong siguro hindi naano sa media or hindi nila masyadong na-highlight. Pakiramdam siguro ng iba makakakuha pa siya ng konting boto doon sa mga supporters nung kandidato na yon. So yun nga, doon ako believe kay Atty. Lu kasi walang takot talaga na parang even braver than yung mga nasa ticket ni VP Lenny na opposition.
The same way na Walden and Calyodi are also doing it in their own context. So, I mean, I can see each of you are fighting your own fight. Parang iba-ibang division yan, but the same essentially yung strategy and team and all, right? I mean, that's how I see.
Maganda yung analogy, Richard. Iba't ibang, because I like boxing. So, my heavyweight, my light heavyweight, my middleweight. Okay.
Welterweight sa Calyodi.
Tsaka iba't ibang platform, ang galing.
Welterweight kayo, man.
So I do I take the battles sa middleweight division. Tama ba?
Tama.
Kalug, may tanong din ako dyan. I mean, there are people who say, I mean, I've tried to follow the progressive movement in the Philippines. Panon pa nila Isabelo de los Reyes time pa, no? The first labor union movements. It has been almost a century, at least a century, since the first progressive modern radical movements in the Philippines came. Of course, there were ones in before. But many are also saying, and I've heard this also from people within the movement, so they said, it seems Filipinos in general tend to be more conservative, and it seems the influence of feudalism has been very strong. I mean, the same way when in the US, they'll say Americans on average are more center-right than center-left. It's a country of Reagan rather than a country of, let's say, FDR for that matter. What is your take after all these years of trying to push for a kind of progressive agenda? Because the reality is that marami sa ating kababayan still seem to vote for candidates of continuity rather than candidates of radical change. What's going on there? What is your reading? Of course, I have my own reading, but I want to know your reading and what keeps you going here? What keeps you going?
I think there is an undercurrent of radicalism sa lahat ng yan na nagkakaroon lang ng mga maling ekspresyon. Even the fact that people support Bongbong Marcos, may undercurrent ng radicalisasyon yan. Remember, yung diskurso na pinasimula ni Duterte na yung atake niya sa yellows, na finiframe niya as anti-oligarchy, I think may resonance yun eh. So if you support yung ganon, si Duterte, for that kind of a discourse, that means may undercurrent ka ng pagiging radical na anti-elite protest. Sa maling direksyon lang kasi si Duterte himself is an oligarch. May Dennis Uy siya and he is for the elite. Ibang faction lang siya. Gumagamit lang siya ng diskurso. Kumbaga marunong siya nabasa niya ng matindi ang Filipino masses na may galit sa elite. So chinannel niya against only one part of the elite and not to his part of the elite. Only to that part of the elite na tinatawag niyang yellows, yung mga liberal bourgeoisie. Pero siya shielded siya, concealing the fact na siya ay bourgeoisie rin, concealing the fact na siya ay oligarch din, concealing the fact that he is not at all pro-masa, and he is not at all for change. So you see, even the support for Duterte ay merong basic na galit ng masang Pilipino. Even the support for Marcos is like that. Why do you think na marami ang napiperceive na support from the masses kay Bongbong Marcos? Because Bongbong Marcos naman is using deceit sa masang Pilipino. The masses are already discontented. They are desperate because of the problem of poverty. So anong ginamit ni Bongbong Marcos? Golden Age. Nung panahon ng tatay ko, hindi yung mga yan, yung mga oligarch na yan ay hindi basta-basta na naaapi kayo. Kasi diktador tatay ko, dinidisiplina niya yan, yung mga oligarch na yan. So, you see, kapag kumagat ka doon sa mga panlulokong yon, hindi naman yon dahil wala kang galit sa mga elite. Meron na misdirect lang. And even going to the extent na itong si Bongbong Marcos will use false claim, totally illusory claims. Yung Taliano Gold, hindi siya officially, hindi naman in-officialize yan Pero yung troll farms niya, pinag-aralan nila yan Na maglako ka ng pantasya, kakagat yan kasi desperado yan So there goes the Taliano Gold na kapag nanalo si Bongbong Marcos, babayaran niya utang ng Pilipinas. So again,
so
it's
how to
about
fight
poverty.
that? How to fight that, attorney? I mean, so clearly you're saying there is a grievance. There's a lot of grievance that can be tapped. Unfortunately, it has been manipulated so far. But how do you channel that grievance towards progressive, transformative change?
Number one, we should talk about real solutions to poverty, direct solutions to poverty. Ngayon, kapag ikaw ay sinasabi mo, gusto mong baguhin ang politika at baguhin ang bansa at para ka sa mahirap, at nagsasalita ka lang ng motherhood statements, don't you think that the masses will see through that? Motherhood lang. Alagaan ko kayong mga magsasaka o kaya mga manggagawa for this and that. Totally motherhood, totally generalizations, walang specifics. What we need right now, because the masses will see through that, what we need right now is direct solutions to poverty. Walang paligoy-ligoy. Walang mga kung ano-anong mga compromising positions. For example, pag pinag-usapan natin na ang mga manggagawa ay kontraktual, sila ay walang security of tenure, diretso naman ang solusyon dyan Buwagin mo ang manpower agency. And you should represent yung ganon na kapag ikaw nakaupo, bubuwagin mo talaga yan. At may problema tayo na ang sweldo, hindi nakabubuhay. Diretso solusyon dyan. Itaas mo ang sweldo. Itaas mo sa 750. Tapos hindi pwedeng magkaiba-iba sa ibang regions. Kailangan ng 750 kahit para may ibsan-ibsan ng kahirapan. O pag farmers, ano yung solusyon sa problema ng farmers? Alisin mo yung rice tarification law. Walang paligoy-ligoy. At suportahan mo ang farmers. Kung what you offer will merely be motherhood statements, the masses have been used to motherhood statements. They know that very well. And you cannot win over the masses through the motherhood statements. You have to provide real, direct solutions to poverty. Ngayon, at the same time, kailangan, ng sinasabi ko sa iyo, yung pinaka-problema natin yung pinaka-elementary level ng mahiwalayin natin ang masang Pilipino sa ruling classes, sa elite rule. Yan yung to evolve for the Filipino masses to have class consciousness, to realize na iba sila sa elite. At itong mga tumatakbo, iba't ibang paksyon lang ng elite yan. And it's time for them to tumindig sa kanilang sarili at sa kanilang sariling process. Those two things, I think, will bring about yung pagbabago ng consciousness, raising of consciousness, para hindi na sila maloko ng mga tulad ni Bongbong Marcos o tulad ni Duterte.
Maybe last question. Thank you so much again for that very extensive one. I'm sure Mark can maybe add on this. okay, if current trend lines stand, ayoko mag-Google Trends, mga ganyan style of analysis. It seems we may have another Marcos regime, right? Exactly 50 years after martial law. What is it gonna look like in your opinion? Base mo kay PBM, base dun sa the movement around him, let's just call it that way, the cartel that could come to power, because Sara could be also there in the mix for sure almost. Tita Arroyo will be there in the mix for sure almost. What do you foresee? Do you see a repetition? Do you see something different? Do you see something worse, something better? Do you see some chance that even if Bongbong Marcos wins, there could be some room for progressive resistance or even progressive change? What is your hunch dito? Anong gut feeling mo?
In any case, Marcos the support for Marcos would erode once he wins. Why? Because his support is based on shallow grounds. Ang support niya ay galing sa false claims, sa deceit. Taking advantage of the discontent, the underlying discontent ng Filipino masses. Taking advantage yung radicalization nila, pero mini-misdirect niya. And, peddling false hopes na kapag siya'y nanalo, masusolusyonan ng poverty.
So you think ma-expose siya? Do you think
will be
ma-expose
exposed
siya?
because when
But isn't that the argument for Duterte too? I mean, Duterte made all sorts of promises, 6 months, this and that. He got exposed and yet he's still popular, isn't he?
And he got exposed.
I mean, they can manufacture truth, can they? I mean, this is
Yes.
what they have been doing over the past 6 years. So you're hopeful na ma-expose talaga.
And he got exposed. He eventually got exposed. Only recently. Yun lang problem, only recently. Do you think na may malawak na suporta pa rin si Duterte? Have you seen that yung sinabi nung isang vendor na galit siya kay Duterte at galit na galit siya kay Marcos at saka kay Sara? Alam mong galit na ang masa kay Duterte. He got exposed, but then may tagasalo Ang tagasalo to continue the criminal type of elite rule ay si Marcos. And that's the danger of Sara. Because pag na-expose na si Marcos, meron na namang pagsasaluhan ang mga criminal elements na yan sa burgesya, and that's through Sara Duterte. And that's why we have to expose. Salo-salo yan Kapag walang Sara Duterte, it will be the end of the road for them. And it will be the start of us, the real alternatives, kami mga nasa manggagawa. Pero kapag may Sara Duterte, pwede pa nila extend ang illusion. But then again, you can fool, ano bang sabi doon? You can fool all people some of the time. You can fool some people all of the time, but you cannot fool all people all of the time. Sometime later on, you will really have to come face to face with the come-upans, and you will have to come face to face with the pushback from the masses na talagang ang kanilang discontent ay mapupunta na sa tamang direksyon. And you want to discredit Marcos? I don't want Marcos to be president, of course. But you want to discredit Marcos, the easiest way is to make him president. Because he'll be discredited right away. Because he will never deliver on those promises.
Ito yung accelerator model. Parang when Zizek endorsed Trump or something like that. Like, let Trump win and then let's see that he's... Okay, I see where you're coming from. I mean, for me lang, parang problema ko, baka the pendulum will not swing na. They'll put a nail there. You know, I mean, that happens sometimes.
Yes,
but I understand where you're coming from. But for me, that's my worry. They will put a nail. The pendulum will not swing back.
Using repression, they could. And then, meron silang panibagong alternative, which is Sara Duterte. So, it can continue, or we could direct the discontent of the masses sa tamang papuntahan niya. And that's why it is important. That's where I will connect yung significance ni Calyodi at ni Kawadel. Because the only antidote to that is to create an independent force of workers, for the workers to have political weight. If we cannot do it right now, eventually we will just have to do it later on. Pero it is a very, very important part of the change that we want to happen. Hindi tayo pwedeng magbuntot sa kabilang paksyon naman ng elite. Kasi mabuhulog na naman tayo sa the same cycle na magbubuntot ang masa at ang manggagawang Pilipino sa ibang faction na naman, sa more democratic faction, sa liberal bourgeoisie, doon tayo bubuntot, and then that's the alternative to this criminal bourgeoisie. Eventually, dapat talaga ang masang Pilipino tumindig on their own. So yun yung tinatry namin i-build nila kanina.
Salamat. Thank you very much. Mark, do you have may tanong? Meron gusto magkape yata dyan. Nagpaparinig na sa atin. Coffee break na yata niya. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much, Atty. Luke Espiritu. Thank you, Mark, also for everything, no, for arranging this and being a great co-host as always. Maraming salamat. We appreciate very much your long explanations kasi yun ang exactly the point why we have this podcast. We want to have long-form, substantive discussion. So maraming salamat sa lahat. Again, closing remarks. Ano po yung party list nyo? Ano po yung, I don't know, kung may gusto nyo kayong iparating sa ating mga voters, especially younger voters, Gen Z, yung mga nakikinig sa atin. Ano po yung mensahe nyo, Attorney?
I will start with that. Buti na banggit mo. I really have high, believe ako sa Gen Z. If you look at the mock elections na ginagawa sa mga schools, one thing is very clear doon sa mga mock elections na yun. Rejected ang mga trapo doon. Laglag sila doon. Ang lahat ng nalalagay doon sa top 12 ay mga progressive. Progressive na mga mass leaders, labor leaders, and of course sila ni Chel Jokno, sila ni Laila de Lima na mga at least progressive politicians. Laglag na, rejected ng mga trapo. And I just hope sana yun yung eleksyon sa buong Pilipinas, ano? Kung yung mock elections lang sa mga schools. Now, they have shown the way na this fight is not about simply yung i-thwart si Marcos at saka si Duterte. It's not about personality politics. It's about rejecting elite rule. Kasi nga, ang mga trapo na to, na kahit na nandun na sa Lenny camp, ay nire-reject nila. Diba? They wanna vote for Lenny, pero yung mga trapo, talagang wala, laglag. Diba? So it's not about just putting Lenny into power so that Marcos will not be president. It's about the clamor na itong elite rule na to, sumusobra na to, elite rule as manifested by trapo rule, at baguhin na natin to. And I just hope na itong inspiration at motivation ng mga kabataan, ito rin sana ang mag-move sa ating mga manggagawa, sa ating masang Pilipino, na tumindig na rin at i-reject itong mga elite na to, itong mga trapo rule na to, and fight for real solutions to poverty. There should be a merger between the democracy that the youth are fighting for and the real solutions against poverty that the workers and the Filipino masses are struggling for. If you merge the two, the fight for democracy and the fight against poverty, then that will be a real movement for change. And that is our hope. These elections and even beyond.
Ano po ulit yung PLM? Anong number kayo sa party list?
Number 1, 2, 3, PLM party list.
Kayo po, anong number kayo sa Senate?
Sabihin ko naman, ako ay number...
naman, I mean, ano to, walang hiyana dito. I mean, go. Make the pitch.
Okay, number 26 po sa balota. Kapag makalimutan nyo ang number, huwag nyo na lang... ako ay nasa gitna ni Chis Escudero at ni JV... Estrada, si Jinggoy Estrada.
Jinggoy, ayan, maganda yan.
Huwag nyo na silang botohin, okay? Nagpasan mo si Chis, bilugan mo yung Espiritu, mas huwag ka nang tumawid kay Estrada.
Okay. Ayan tayo baka ma-invalid na mamayan kung ano-anong gagawin. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much, Attorney, for joining us, and please continue your struggle for more progressive Philippines. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. And maraming salamat sa ating mga audience, Project Pilipinas. Ito po yung latest episode natin. More to come as we head towards the final stretch of election 2022.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Mark. Mabuhay kayo.
Salamat po. God bless. Thank you.